Good evening, everyone. I'm Zen Master Sebastian Rizzon, founder of the Zen Art Center and the Mind Light Way School of Zen Arts. I give these talks on the third Thursday of every month. So most of you could probably tell me where you were before you came to this class tonight. But can anybody tell me where you were before you were born? Were you somewhere else? Or did you just appear out of nowhere? Where do you go after you die? Do you disappear into nothing? In Zen practice, we call these types of questions koans. Koans are questions or statements which force us to transcend the logical thinking process and provoke us to seek direct insight into our true nature. Before you came to this class tonight, you were somewhere else. You could trace the series of events in your life that led to you being here. Theoretically, you could also trace all of the physical events that led to the creation of your body, all the way back to the Big Bang. You could also trace the physical material that makes up your body after you die, until it gets swallowed up by a black hole. But when did your mind appear? So material science and physics have no coherent explanations to answer any of these types of questions. These are deep questions that have been contemplated since the birth of our self-awareness. But we still don't even have cohesive definitions about what the mind, consciousness, and life actually are. Some might argue that your mind is your brain because of a correlation between mental activities and brain activity. But this correlation doesn't equal causation. So far, our pursuit of understanding our mind and consciousness from a physical and material perspective has been fruitless. So how can we begin to understand the things which are at the foundation of all of our experiences? Where was your mind before you were born? Where does your mind go after you die? What is the purpose of life? These questions are at the heart of Zen. Zen teachings point you to an understanding that transcends language and concepts. Zen practice guides you to look directly into your mind and experience your true nature. Awakening to one's true nature is what we call enlightenment. Our mind is the foundation of our being. It can't be found in the physical world or in any ancient texts or scriptures. As long as you rely on conceptual explanations, physical descriptions, or words of any sort, you'll be masking the true nature of the mind. In order to experience the true nature of the mind, you must put down all of the thoughts that fill your mind so that you can see what remains when everything is gone. This means your mind must be completely clear. The true nature of the mind is completely empty. But most people's mind are constantly filled with thoughts, feelings, opinions, and desires. So how can you clear them out? In Zen, koans are like seeds that you plant in your mind. Your thoughts are like the weeds that grow and block the light of your mind from reaching those seeds. If you want to be able to see your seeds grow, flower, and produce fruit, first you have to till the garden and clear the weeds. Meditation is a technique that we use to till the garden of our mind. We use it to help us clear our mind of the thoughts that grow like weeds. So I've given you a number of koans today. Those are seeds. Now I'll show you a meditation technique you can use to clear your mind so that all of these seeds have room to grow. Before we meditate, let's begin with a breathing technique that can help you relax and prepare your body for meditation. I just want you to start by breathing a little bit slower and a little bit deeper than you usually do. Visualize your heart in the center of your chest as you breathe. As you listen to me, I want you to continue to breathe a little bit slower and a little bit deeper. Feel your breath coming in through your nose and mouth and collecting all of the energy from your brain and moving it from your head into your heart. Imagine now that you're breathing with your heart. The purpose of this technique is to try to align our mind, heart, and body. You can also place your hand on your heart and close your eyes if you'd like. Keep breathing a little bit slower and deeper as I talk. This is a technique you can use to relax or reset yourself whenever you feel nervous or anxious, or whenever you feel like you need to switch gears from different activities you're doing throughout the day. You can use it when you wake up, before you enter a stressful meeting, before you go to sleep, or before you meditate. So let's just take a few more moments to take some slow and deep breaths. Tonight we'll be doing a mantra meditation. We're going to turn around in our places and we'll be sitting cross-legged. When you're meditating, I want you to try to keep your neck and back straight so that your posture is straight and you're not going to get a sore neck and back. If your eyes were open, we'll be meditating with our eyes closed, but if they're open, they would be at a 45-degree angle looking at the floor. You want to have your hands with your right hand, left hand touching your thumbs, centered in your lap. If you get uncomfortable during the meditation, you can stretch out or stand up. Just be quiet and respectful of the people meditating around you. If you prefer a chair, you can sit with your back off of the back of the seat and flat on the floor. In Zen meditation, a mantra is used to clear the mind. The mantra is the focal point of meditation, usually a word or a phrase that's repeated within your mind. If you try not to think, thoughts will inevitably come into your mind. By focusing on a mantra, you can use it to push out all of the other thoughts. When you meditate, try to let go of your feelings, opinions, desire, and ego. As you meditate, only concentrate on your mantra. If another thought comes into your mind, let it pass and return to focusing on your mantra. You can use anything as a mantra during meditation, but I usually suggest using the mantra of Kwan Seum Bosal. It's Kwan Seum Bosal. Kwan Seum Bosal is the name of the bodhisattva of love and compassion in Korean Zen. A bodhisattva is a teacher or an enlightened being that has dedicated their life to helping others. Kwan Seum Bosal is often depicted with thousands of eyes and hands and is said to be able to see the suffering of everyone and help those who call out her name. Using this mantra will bring compassionate energy towards you while you meditate. This compassionate energy is like giving water to your seeds. Now let's turn around and we'll meditate together for about 20 minutes or so, okay? So we're just going to turn around in our spots. can open your eyes and stand up and stretch out for a second. So before we started meditating, I asked you a few questions about birth, life, and death. Where do we come from before we're born? Where do we go after we die? And what is the purpose of our life while we're alive? These questions all point us to try to understand the true nature of our being. So let's dig into that a little more. Where did you come from before you were born? Did you come from nothing? Did you appear out of nowhere? Is it even possible for something to appear out of nothing? All of the scientific evidence we have, and all of my own experiences, seem to suggest that it's impossible for something to come out of nothing. Everything that exists seems to be contingent upon something else. In Buddhism, we say that everything comes from emptiness. The Sanskrit word for this is śūnyatā. Emptiness is not the same thing as nothing. They're different words for a reason. Emptiness contains nothing, but it is not nothing. Emptiness is like a void. A void creates a vacuum which pulls things into it. This pull creates potential. This potential is what draws things into existence. This is the fundamental force that created our universe. This force doesn't have a name, but we could call it the force of creation for the purpose of this discussion. Potential is also a form of energy. When I use the word love, I'm referring to this force of creation. When I say love, I mean it in a more universal sense. Interpersonal human love is only one form or manifestation of this energy. There's clear evidence of a creative force at work in our world. We can use our body to create things. We can bring something from our imagination that does not currently exist or that only exists within our mind, and we can bring that thing out into observable reality. This is precisely what all of our technology is. We use science to create this technology, but still, science can't explain where these ideas came from. So where do these ideas come from? They come from our mind. The source of our creations is our mind. The creative force is the force that our mind exerts on reality. In our human lives, this force manifests in so many ways. The creative force is on display anytime we create an original piece of art or writing. It's also the force that drives us to procreate, reproduce, and make babies. In fact, anytime we act with our bodies, we're creating changes in the universe. So why do we create? Why do we live, reproduce, and continue to perpetuate life? It's an instinct built into the foundation of our being. These are questions that have been contemplated since humans developed self-awareness. But the universe is vast, and it may be infinite, so it's difficult to comprehend. This is why we create conceptual forms or mental constructs to represent the things in our world. This is the purpose of names, words, and language. We use words to create conceptual boundaries that are finite so that we can try to understand a smaller subset of our seemingly infinite universe. For instance, we say this is a table. We define what a table is so that we have the same understanding of what it is and how it's useful. We also recognize that everything outside of this table is not the table. By doing this, we create an imaginary boundary. We arbitrarily separate some set of things from its environment so that we can define what it is, because it helps us navigate our world and understand how we can interact with it. Initially, we evolved to instinctually focus on the things immediately surrounding us that can affect our body. Now we've developed science, mathematics, and technology to understand even more about our universe far beyond our planet. But our knowledge is still extremely limited. Ultimately, to continue to expand our knowledge, we'll have to understand our mind and the way it works. However, the mind is not material. It's composed of the very same emptiness that gave birth to our universe. So how can we even begin to understand this emptiness? Our conceptual forms, mental constructs, and words can help us understand our surroundings, but if we focus too much on the forms, we'll be unable to understand the vastness of what's beyond the forms. To continue to expand our knowledge, we'll need to reach beyond the limits of our current dogmatic approach. It might help us if we realize that all of the conceptual boundaries that we create are nothing more than mental constructs that help us navigate the world. These boundaries are incredibly useful, but they also hide the underlying truth about our reality. Our mind is the origin of all of our observations and everything we understand. The challenge to understanding our mind is that it's infinite and eternal, which are concepts that are nearly impossible for us to rationally understand and comprehend. In order to overcome this shortcoming, we've evolved to create finite forms that help us understand smaller parts of this infinite realm. For instance, time is a mental construct. It's actually infinite. But we create smaller segments, such as seconds, minutes, and hours, which we can comprehend because it's at a scale that's relevant to our lives. We do the same thing with geometry and mathematics, but it's slightly harder to explain. For instance, a point is an infinitesimally small dot. A line is an infinite amount of connected dots. A circle has an infinite amount of dots around its circumference, which is equidistant from a point at its center. These are just a few relatively simple examples of how we use things that are infinite and infinitesimally small to create a concept which is finite that we can rationally comprehend. Most of us are trained through our language to rationalize our entire reality in this way. These ideas can be helpful to understanding our universe, but if we want to understand the deeper underlying truth, we have to recognize that these are mental constructs that will always limit us from a comprehensive understanding. All of these conceptual forms are defined in a way so that we can derive information from what's contained within them. For instance, once we've defined a circle, we can use a mathematical formula to determine the area inside of it. The area is rational information about the amount of two-dimensional emptiness inside the circle. In this way, we're able to gather information about the emptiness. In essence, every form that we perceive in nature serves the purpose of conveying this type of information, including life forms. Life forms are obviously much more complex, but I think it might be useful to view life forms as vehicles for collecting information about reality for our mind. All of the properties and information within these forms has been compartmentalized by the conceptual boundaries. All of the conceptual forms and mental constructs are not reality. They merely represent reality in our imagination. They only exist in our mind. In truth, none of these lines or boundaries actually exist. Ultimately, these lines are what separates us from the underlying truth. We've evolved like this so that we can understand our world in a way that helps us survive. We survive, reproduce, and continually create new concepts and technology so that we can continue to expand our knowledge about the truth of nature. You could say that the purpose of our existence is to understand ourselves and our surroundings. However, I don't think we evolve based on some complex algorithm. It seems more akin to a process of trial and error. In our effort to survive, we make certain postulations or assumptions about our reality, such as what's safe to eat. If our postulations are false, we experience suffering or die. If they're true, it makes it easier for us to survive and thrive. When you're thriving, it feels as if you're in complete harmony with the universe. When I look around the world at humanity, I see a species that's incredibly good at surviving, but is also mired in suffering. This is partially because we've become hyper-focused on ourselves as individuals. We've learned to overemphasize the artificial boundaries that separate us, which has caused us to lose sight of the fact that we're connected to each other. When we work in harmony with nature and with each other, our creations can provide us with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world we live in. So I suspect I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. This is the reason we seek connection and community. The reason I started holding these meditation classes was to provide a place for this community to meet, so that we could all connect. This pull to connect comes from our heart, and it's ingrained in all of us through our intuition. When we experience this pull, we often refer to it as the feeling of love. When we don't acknowledge and understand these connections to each other, it can lead to suffering. If our purpose is to understand ourselves and our world, it would behoove us to work together. We need to help each other so we can better understand our connections. Helping others to overcome their suffering is compassion. Compassion is what brings us together, and it's a pure expression of love. Love is the force of our mind that compels us to create so we can learn about ourselves. When we help each other, we can learn from each other and accelerate this process. I suggest to you that the purpose of life is to understand ourselves and to find harmony with nature. When you feel harmony with nature, you're in heaven. When you experience dissonance and dissociation, you feel like you're in hell. These feelings are your intuition, which is the force of your mind guiding you towards the direction you need to go. However, too much thinking can overwhelm your mind and make it hard to hear your intuition. In tonight's talk, I started out by asking you koans about birth, life, and death. Birth, life, and death are just examples of artificial lines that we've created to compartmentalize and separate things that we don't fully understand. Meditation is a technique that you can use to clear your mind. When your mind is clear, these lines dissolve into the emptiness and reveal that everything is connected. There are no lines between birth, life, and death. And there are no lines between you and me and everything in nature. We created these lines with our words. So don't become too attached or fixated on my words. They're only my attempt to help you find your direction. At best, my words should only be thought of as metaphors, trying to point you towards an experience that transcends words. To experience this connection and find harmony with yourself, just start meditating a little bit every day. Learn how to focus on your actions in such a way that they also become like a mantra. Then everything you do can become a meditation, and your mind will always be clear. When your mind is clear, it becomes like a mirror, reflecting the heavens through eternity. This is the path to nirvana, the complete liberation from suffering. If you want to pursue this path, clear your mind and follow your heart in the direction it's compelling you to go. Just keep taking steps in that direction until you reach your destination. I wish you all good luck in this journey. So that concludes my talk for tonight, but I always stay and answer questions about anything I talked about, anything about meditation, anything about the mind. Usually this is the most interesting part of class, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I dove right into the deep end of life and death tonight, so if anything I said that you didn't understand. Question?
Thinking about like childbirth, and that like when you give birth to your baby, you almost like share a mind.
Yeah. I
would know what my baby would need or doesn't need, or just by looking at them.
I'm just going to repeat what you're saying because the mic doesn't always pick it up. We just had a comment that what I was saying about birth reminded you of having a baby, and that you share a mind and that you know what your baby needs just from looking at it.
Or even the baby knows that you're its mother.
Or the baby knows that it's your mother. Okay.
Instant sharing of the mind.
Thanks for sharing that, because I don't have experience in that area. So it's nice to hear like little anecdotal evidence of what I'm saying. But I think it's interesting because we separate ourselves from other people, but then, I've experienced, not with a child, but with other people, like you do experience internal connections where you kind of understand what they're saying just from their expressions or things like that. So I definitely think there's some truth in that, and I think our intuition is guiding that for sure. Yeah, so thanks for adding that. Did you have like anything you wanted to know about that, or a question? I don't know.
I wonder if it's because
Absolutely.
And like your heart is so open at that point.
Yeah, and I think
And those walls come down, like you said.
absolutely, and I think that's one of the places where it naturally tears down some of those barriers that you think are so solid. And yeah, and I think some people, you know, they learn something about themselves through their children and giving birth, and about humanity as well. So I think most people I talk to who have children said that's one of the most profound experiences they've ever had in their life. I don't know if you would agree with that. So I think there is something, and we literally call that procreation, you know, so it's literally creating another being. It's the only way you can actually do that as a human. So I think it is a very unparalleled situation in human experience. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the places of clear evidence of the types of things I'm talking about. Do you ever wonder like where your baby was, where they came from? I mean, I know they came from your body, but like at some point they're separate from you. And
Yeah,
like
I would always get a feeling that he, like my kid or whatever, as he was like getting older, like things, his personality would develop, and I would just see things that like, where did you get that from? Or like it's almost like he had multiple lives or souls like guiding him or something. Like where did he get these things that are in his mind? Because they come from me. That's like something that I
yeah.
often like would think about with him. It's like,
Yeah,
like, where did you get that from?
I know I've talked about
Why
this
is that?
in previous Dharma talks, but reincarnation is an idea in Buddhism as well, that your mind comes back in different forms.
And like other people would say, like we would say, oh, you did this in a past life. Oh, you must have been that in a past life. It's like, why do we say that?
Yeah, that's a very common thing to say to people. And yeah, I don't know. I can definitely give you my thoughts on that. But I like I said, I think the mind is eternal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe in the laws of science and that we've defined, all matter that's created or that exists is all that will ever exist, right? So that's one of the laws of science. I can't remember what, it's like the preservation of matter or something like that. So if you think about it like that, all of the matter is all that will ever exist, and it's finite. And if time is infinite, eventually it's like shuffling a deck. Eventually the deck comes up with the same hand. And eventually the molecules and particles all align in exactly the same way. I know it seems impossible, but if time's infinite, it's inevitable. And at that time, your mind knows, that's my body, and it goes in.
Is it just one mind?
Well,
Have one mind?
what do you think?
Or you share?
Let me put it to you in the way I talked about the talk tonight. I think all of those lines that we've created are made up. So we have what we think is a self and a mind. But I would argue that's a form of dissociation that's caused from our body, experience of our body, experiencing from our body. So it's like having two eyes. Like they have different inputs, but they feed the same mind. And like certain things, like you have one mind in your body, but they've done operations where they split the brain, and it almost seems like you have two separate, like different parts of your body respond differently. Or, you know, some people have split personalities within their bodies. That's just another form of dissociation. So I think on some level, we're experiencing dissociation from our greater mind. And through meditation, you can actually learn to overcome that dissociation And that's, in Buddhism, what sometimes you'll hear, like Buddha said, he became one with everything. Like that is that experience of being one with everything. And so what I was saying in like more literal terms almost here is that if you meditate and you put down all of your thinking, all of those words, all of those ideas, all of those concepts, all of those mental constructs, if you keep practicing, those start to dissolve and you see that they're not real. And this is like kind of a metaphor because it has to be experienced. No matter what I tell you, you're not going to feel what I'm telling you until you experience it. So, but the more you meditate, you'll get feelings for it. You'll get little hints of it here. And then over time, you can make all of those lines completely dissolve. And that's what we would say is getting enlightenment. Then you understand the true nature of who you are. Sometimes you'll hear people in Zen say, then you've seen your mind. And you say your mind, but like I said, I think it's part of like the same thing, and that all of these lines and boundaries are completely made up. But the only way our bigger mind gets experiences is through us, because we're finite forms that can collect the information for a bigger mind. The same way your eyes collect information for your brain, we're doing like an analogous kind of thing for something that goes beyond us. Any questions? That might be a.
I was curious about whether or not there's a particular attitude to take during meditation when we're cutting these weeds out of our mind, or if we're fading the boundaries that are helping us to collect information about ourselves and the world. If we're not just sort of falling into this nothingness, and our mind is a little bit tenacious or even relentless, then is there some attitude towards that quality?
Yeah, I mean, I might phrase what you said a little differently, just because I think the thing you're fighting a lot of times is your ego and your sense of self. I don't mean like necessarily like you have a big ego or something. I mean, it's like your literal sense of yourself. Like it doesn't want. We have an instinct to keep that too because it helps our bodies survive. Because no matter how much I think I'm connected to everything, if I just feed you all day and I don't feed myself, I'm gonna die. So like we have an instinct also built in to sustain ourselves. What I was saying earlier is that I think we overemphasize that aspect of us, and it's only part of our being and who we are. But yeah, is there an attitude that you asked about? What is the attitude you should take during meditation? And what I would suggest is patience and compassion towards yourself. The same way you would say the same type of thing you would show to someone who you were trying to help. So sometimes we're very hard on ourselves, and that can also just be a barrier to our own progress because we feel disappointed in ourselves and things like that. So try to be patient with yourself. Try to be compassionate. Like what you're doing, trying to help your mind attain this state, is like one of the ultimate forms of compassion you can have towards yourself. But it takes time. So be patient with yourself. A lot of these things, like, I'm going to use a different situation, but like if you get a bad injury, it doesn't heal overnight. But over time, if you do physical therapy and all the things, after a couple years, if you might feel normal again. But if you judge it just based every day, you're going to feel like nothing's happening, right? But when you take a longer view of that, then it's easier to see it. Or, if you wanted to write a book, it doesn't happen after you put the first paragraph down. It takes time, and then writing every day and editing, and eventually you get to something that's like a book that was what you were imagining. But everything takes time. I think everything we do creates karma, which prevents us from seeing our mind. It's like putting clothes over your mind. You can't see it. You have to take it off first. So everything you do, you, me, the highest enlightened masters ever, their actions create karma. The difference is they have a practice that's constantly clearing it out. So whether it's sitting and meditating every day, one of the things I really like to guide people towards is using your actions to become a form of meditation. So as you're doing things, you are clearing your mind. So if you're completely focused on what you're doing, that action becomes your meditation. Your mind's not wandering off into the past or the future. It's right in the moment, and it's not having excess thinking, which is going to take you out of that moment and potentially cause you more suffering, because you can mess up what you're doing. So if you want to do good work at your job, the more focused you are on that, the better work you're going to do, right? But that also is good for your mind, because it's focusing your mind like a meditation. And I know you do martial arts as well. That's one of the ways I first discovered that was through martial arts process. And one of the things I'm trying to teach here as well is that any art form can do that for you, whether it's, drawing, writing, playing music, all of those things. At some point you can reach a flow state in those activities, and at that point your mind is completely focused on what you're doing, and that is a form of meditation. So you can actually, it takes practice, like I said, just like sitting meditation, but you can turn your whole life into a flow state if you practice long enough. Then your mind is always clear. So I kind of alluded to some of that in my talk, but I've given other talks specifically about that. But I think it's good to mention that as well. So that's one of the reasons I created this school as the Zen Art Center, because I'm trying to help people understand that all of your artistic practices and your endeavors in life can also be a form of meditation. And that's how my teacher taught me, through martial arts. He was a Zen master and a martial arts master. So he taught sitting meditation, but also then showed us how to do martial arts and explained to us how that also became a meditation. And for me, that form of meditation resonated with me. It was much more sustainable for me. Every time I had tried to sit, I'd kind of given up after a while because of the same things you were saying. Like, my mind was clouded and my ego was resisting, because I felt like, oh, I don't need this, like that, or I can't do this, or, like those types of doubts and resistance kept coming up, to the point where I stopped meditating for a while, until I started to make these links between these different parts of my life. Then after I started doing it through my actions and my martial arts practice, then sitting became so much easier, and I got so much more out of it. So there's different routes up the same mountain, you know, different ways to go. And that's one of the things I want to kind of help people understand. As long as you're focused and treating what you're doing like a mantra, whether it's sitting and focusing on a mantra, or living your life and just staying focused on what you're doing. When you do your dishes, completely focus on doing your dishes. When you're sweeping the floor, completely focus on sweeping the floor. Don't let any thoughts come between you and what you're doing. And that was, I lived in I didn't mention this before, but I lived in a Buddhist temple for 16 years. And a big part of the life there was doing chores. And a big part of that was learning to focus on what you're doing. So at first I thought my teacher was just really strict, because he would come through and say, oh, you missed a spot on the floor, like sweep that up. But he would say, that means your mind isn't clear. So, or you did the dishes, but you missed a spot on your dishes. That means you weren't focused on what you were doing. So a lot of that, in that situation, it kind of reinforced and reminded you to remain focused on everything you were doing. So I don't know, I kind of went off on a tangent. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Thanks for the questions. Any other questions? Happy to answer any of them. We're a little past time, but I'm happy to stay and answer questions as well.
Is free will real in your view, or is it kind of all deterministic and destiny?
It's a great question. And it's one I've given talks and I've written about it as well. I think sometimes in the way we define it, I'm not really a fan of the way we've defined it, because I don't think it's absolute in either direction. So I think some things are determined. Like, you can do whatever you want today to better your life and do all these perfect things, but there could be an asteroid hurtling towards our planet that's going to destroy us all tomorrow that we don't know about. So that could be determined, you know, and I don't think anything you can do, if that's the trajectory of the way things are, I don't think anything you could do could prevent that. So is that determined? But then in your own world, day to day, I think you do have agency over what you do. I write poetry as well, and so I'm going to use a little bit of a metaphor for you. And I wrote a poem about free will, but this is the idea behind it, is the universe is playing a song, okay? Well, all of the notes, all of the vibrations, everything that's going on in the universe creates a song. All of the way the planets spin around in orbit. You, in your body, have an instrument. You can play along, or you can be silent. You can play in a way that makes harmony with that song, or you can play in a way that creates dissonance, which might create an unpleasant experience. So I think that would be the most I could really offer you as far as free will. I don't know if that metaphor is confusing or clarifying.
I liked it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't control the universe's song, but you can control your part, your melody, your harmony, and I think your intuition can help you feel that vibration of the universe, to know, like, when I do things this way, it's harmony. And sometimes I think, like I said, I think it's more like trial and error. You put out a sound, and then it's like, oh, that didn't sound so good. or, then you do something that's in tune with the universe, and everything starts to feel like, oh, it's flowing, and it feels like everything's beautiful, but then other times you do a series of events and it causes a chain reaction that causes you all kinds of difficulties. But then, some of it is just beyond your control, like I said with the asteroid, like some things you do can't change. Like, do you have absolute free will? Like, anything you will to exist will happen? No. Like, no matter how much you want it to work, if you put sand in your gas tank, you're not going to get very far, right? So, but if you realize, oh, my car runs on gas, I put gas in it, and then I get a lot further, then you have like this harmonious flow with your vehicle. So I was just using some different metaphors here, mixing them up a little bit, but I think that, that is generally the way things seem to work. And so the way I navigate this with that knowledge is just trying to keep my mind clear so I can stay in tune with everything going around me to the best of my abilities through this little vehicle I have of my body. And that has what's brought me harmony in my life. The more I am doing that, the better my life gets. Do you have an opinion on free will?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to share it. I was just
Yeah, I think it's real, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's used most of the time.
yeah.
But like we sort of can use it, like the vast majority of human actions are not.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just like momentum and instincts and things like that may feel free, but they're not always free. So I have a very nuanced answer, but yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. Did you have a question back there? I'm sorry.
Well, it's a question and kind of piggyback on what you're saying.
Yep.
And the universe plays a song, and I feel like for you to tune into that, you have to know thyself. So I like to live by a perspective is everything kind of thing. And I wanted to get your point of view on that, because I feel like from a negative comes positive. It's just the way you look at it, the way you decipher it.
So I'm not 100% I've got what you're asking me.
What do you think about the statement, perspective is everything?
Perspective is everything. Absolutely. And you can so know thyself. First, I want to just say that's a lot about what my talk was about tonight, like understanding who you are, what the essence of your being is, why you're alive, trying to understand what you really are, what is your mind. It's not something that you can read in a book and get a really good answer. So I think like that is incredibly important. And like you said, like we were saying about the free will and stuff, to get to your other part of your question, some of these things are just beyond your control. You can't control other people. Sometimes people do horrible things. You can't control them. You can't control the universe. What you can control is how you react to those things and what you do. So I think like knowing yourself helps you know what to do, and knowing how you react, that's a form of, or knowing how to internally react is a form of perspective. Like you're taking a different perspective on things. Like if something bad happens, you can take the perspective like, oh, I'm going to learn from that, rather than the perspective of there's nothing I can do, or, like life is unfair, or, those kind of things. Like, truthfully, life is unfair. I mean, I guess it can seem that way at least, right? Because sometimes things happen and it just doesn't make sense. Like, it feels like you're being punished, right? But that's, I think, just an inevitability in life. Like, you're gonna get old and your body's it's going to deteriorate, and that's gonna cause some level of suffering. So, like, how do you the only thing you can change at that point is your mindset. And all of these things are sources of suffering, but even suffering, like, when you're connected to everything in the way that I was kind of alluding to in my talk tonight, you can feel like you're in hell, but if you're not attached to that, you can still be in heaven, no matter how high the amount of pain you're in.
Can you repeat that one more time?
You can feel like you're in hell, but if you are truly connected to everything, you can always
Okay.
feel like you are in
I
heaven.
thought I heard something different, but yeah, okay.
I don't know if that's
No, that makes sense to me.
So in that way, that is just a change of perspective in a certain way. You're taking a larger perspective that it's beyond yourself. And it's easy to say that, and it sounds great, but you can experience that if you keep going in this direction. Like, you can really feel that way, and it's not just words to make you feel better. I mean, my own experiences, that's completely real. One of the most real experiences I have ever had is feeling like you're connected to everything. Any other questions? Well, if no one has any more questions, I would like to, first of all, thank all of you for coming tonight. I really enjoyed meeting you, getting to know you a little bit, hearing your questions, hearing what people are curious about. It's interesting to see there's a lot of overlap. Like, the free will thing was something I've heard people talk about, and I was like, some people are very rigid in their feelings about that. So it's something I've actually wanted to address. But I just have I'm so glad you gave me that opportunity. I do have a few announcements. I give these particular talks on the third Thursday of every month. It's always a little bit different, but it's a lot about the realm of the mind, why we meditate, those types of things, understanding ourselves. I also do a guided meditation on the first Thursday of every month, where it's less talking and more just going through different types of meditation techniques together and practicing together. So it's usually like a short introduction to a technique and then a short meditation, and we just do that for the whole class.
The technique change or
I've been kind of just going with the same techniques right now, which is the techniques I know and use. So, but I am kind of like entertaining the idea of having guest people as part of that, offering different techniques and approaches to meditation. So, so I think that would be the kind of platform for that type of thing. But that's the first Thursday of every month. It's more just to give us another opportunity to get together and meditate. I do question and answers at the end of that as well. So a lot of times we will get into some of these more interesting topics. I also host art and writing groups. So they're once a month. And I use a little bit of, the first group is called the Zen Artist Collective, where we make art together and just try to encourage each other to be creative And we also learn about the relationships between art and meditation. And I do a brief meditation, like 5 minutes during that session, just to introduce people to meditation and show you how you can use it in your artistic process. That is the fourth Saturday of every month from 3:30 to 5. So it's in next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, September 28th. The other group is the Zen Writers and Poets Society, and that's a writing group that's very similar. We're just writing together, sharing our creations, and we also practice a little bit of meditation, and I explain how to use that in your process. I'm a writer and an artist as well. That's why I host those particular classes. That is the next one will be Sunday, October 6th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. I was doing that the second Sunday, but I bumped it up to the first one this month because I have an obligation the second Sunday. So this one will be on the first Sunday. And you don't need any prior experience. You don't have to be good at art or writing to participate. It's open to everyone from all levels. Just all you need is a curiosity and a want to create. So, and you're welcome to be a part of that. Yeah, you can check our website and meetup page. It's all on there as well. Let's see. Yeah, and if you aren't on my email list, I have a list in the back that you can sign up, and I send out a reminder, once a month newsletter with the reminders of when the class schedule is for the month. And in closing, I rely solely on donations for these classes, so if you can afford to make a donation, I have a little donation jar and Venmo information in the back. I really appreciate it. It'll allow me to continue teaching and hosting these classes, and I greatly appreciate any support you can give. Other than that, you're all welcome to hang out and chat and strike up a conversation with me or anybody here. I'm not in a rush to get out of here, so you're welcome to hang out for a minute. And thank you so much for coming. Have a great night.